Hello, fellow art marshals, breaker of the frames, keeper of the flame of creativity. This is another art gym session, and this is titled Telling Stories with the Body. Bringing two of my key loves together, embodiment and creativity. For me, the idea of a story could be synonymous with passing culture on, revealing humanity to itself, sharing secrets, experiencing ourselves and letting others witness us, being in a space, a container, an arena in which meaning is analyzed. I think we in our lives experience different emotions and receive different signals in the form of light and sound and taste and texture, and then human beings are weavers of meaning. We add a story. We place our particular character, our persona, our identity, who we think we are, in relation to that, and then plot that in relation to our cultural understanding, where we are in history, where we are in the world geographically, what that means for us and our role in our hierarchy, all these kind of things. And that's an addition. It doesn't mean that it's all false. It just means that it's a craft, something I believe we should apply ourselves to understand how to tell stories, how to connect the truth to the fiction, how to free ourselves from limitation to our particular personality, and to allow life itself to flow through us. As a storyteller, I believe we open ourselves to many different experiences, and then we're witnessing life. And then we translate it back through our words, through our expression, through how we engage with other people. And that allows life to pass on through to them. And I do believe it's a beautiful, almost sacred practice, storytelling. It's a way to celebrate and pay tribute to all of the amazing, surreal storylines which weave throughout humanity. So sitting in the space with me feels like a very special training session. Thank you for joining me in this. And by the end of this process, my intention is for you to feel like your mind and your body are your instruments as storytellers. You don't need to conceive of yourself as technically a storyteller, as like a profession or even a hobby. It could be someone that just communicates well. It could be someone that, do you know what it's like when you really feel like someone sees you? When they really have received the inner reality. It's such a nice relief to feel received and seen and heard and understood, and like we are not crazy, we are not alienated from the rest of shared experience. And I believe that becoming a more, I was going to say a better communicator, it's not necessarily better, it's just like by expanding our communication channels and the potentials to flow different wavelengths, different volumes, different expressions through ourselves to others. I believe we allow others to receive more of us and therefore to understand us more intimately. And it's a gift to others, but it's also a gift to self, to step into the relief that you can be understood, that you can convey your ideas, that you can share space with others. It could be like a public speaking scenario. You might need to go to court and explain your story. You might be sitting opposite a lover and want to really express what the moment means to you. And also, it's always give and receive, to be able to receive that volume of storytelling, to be able to tune into the subtleties and the exaggerations of the full human expression. So thank you for joining me. Please make this session relevant to you. Find the nature of the storyteller in you and how it's relevant to your life and your current values. And let's drop in now into the session, dropping into the body, and at all times being aware of the many layers that we exist in. There's a 5-body system, which is a nice template to reference. The first being the spiritual body, so how you are engaging in the moment from a conscious perspective, from your soul divine purpose. The second being the mental body, how this makes sense to your personal story and how it can actually practically be implemented logistically. The third one being the energetic body. So just be aware of your energy throughout the session. If there are any blocks coming, or if things open the channels, if more sensation come to the limbs or anything like that. Also be aware of your emotional body, particularly feeling down into your belly, into the alchemical soup of the water element within you, how this churns you, how this makes you feel. And lastly, your physical body. So we'll be doing a lot of physical interaction, and just be aware of yourself within your body and also your body in space, and really opening to how this can be a realignment or recalibration of your body, so that all of those other elements, the spiritual, the mental, the energetic and the emotional, can all flush through you and be exuded and emanated to reach others through your stories that you're telling with your life. All right, let's drop into the session together, getting yourself into a position where you feel calm, you feel grounded. You could be sitting, kneeling or standing, but either way, allow yourself to extend up through your spine so you have your channels opened, feeling you ground down into wherever you are, through your sit bones or through your feet, having the soles of your feet soften and becoming more receptive to both give and receive sensation. Same with the palms of your hands. Coming back to what I call 0 point. It's a state of aliveness and readiness, but not preempting what's to come. If you have any tasks ahead of you, just allow your breath to expand and push back any obligations and responsibilities. As you might hear and feel the noise of the world around one, just allow this to be a time of self-honoring when you're stepping into your creative practice, your self-development practice. And allow that space and time to expand like a temple space, like a safe little bubble in which you can really focus on yourself. Allowing the breath to lead you into your body. And just softening, letting a sigh out with the exhale. So in coming to this 0 point, we're essentially feeling into the nothingness or the void. It's that blank canvas upon which we can create any story or any reality that we like. So feel a releasing in the body, imagining a cloud at the back of the head comprised of all the noise and pictures of all the shoulds, all the can'ts, all the stresses and anxieties, all compounded and compiled into one block or cloud at the back of the head. You can even have your fingers and thumbs here just to feel that place at the back of the head. And now we release that, allowing it to float up and away, giving you space between the noisy mind and your senses of the present. Feeling into our vital organs, the place that holds a lot of emotions, a lot of sensations, and allowing our breath to expand and release. Allowing every exhale to be a surrender, softening into the presence of the body. Releasing any tension in the face, rubbing the hands. And taking that energy and warmth and presence of sensation to the face, just to rub over the eyebrows, down the jawline, around the nose. And just let go. As you start to tune into the awareness within yourself, down in your belly, down into that energetic womb space of creation, up through your solar plexus into your heart. Feel into your knowing. feel into that sensation of what it means to tell stories. And feel into your intention for this session. What do you want to learn from this art gym session? What skills do you want to open to? And just feel into yourself a day or a week or a month or a year from now, when you're really embodying that storyteller, where you are animated and alive and your communication is electric and you're reaching people. Just feel into that state. Setting that as our intended goal state to arrive at in the future. And now I'm going to take you through a meridian massage, and this will activate all of your body. So just follow along with me in the next section. Welcome to the demonstration video for the meridian massage. I'll be running you through a sequence of movements which will activate the different energy lines that run through the body. I hope you find it a very invigorating and revitalizing practice. This is something you can do every day upon waking, or anytime you just want to tune back into the body and allow yourself to flush out the energy channels and reconnect. All of my embodiment practices are based on 3 key elements: breath, sound, and movement. So throughout this practice, feel free to move and breathe and sound and alignment with the main intention of activating and flushing energy through the body. This energy can also sometimes come out as emotions, particularly because we're also activating acupressure points, which are particular points on the body which send a signal along the meridian channels, which are the energy lines in the body, and also correlate to particular organs, which can also harbor different emotions. So it's a beautiful inner meditative practice as we massage these lines along the body. And I've created the sequence in a way that it activates many of the different points throughout the body, drawing up from the earth, coming right through our circuits, and then going back into the ground again. So I'll talk you through this process that you're witnessing on screen, and then I'll go into the specific points that you're pressing the second time through. Position your body so you feel grounded, ideally out in nature where you can connect with the elements. Feet shoulder width apart, joints light and bent, and extending straight up through the spine, so we're not blocking the flow of energy. Start off by drawing energy up from the ground at the back of the legs, raising the buttocks to activate the root, coming around the front, activating the perineum, and coming up through the bladder point and fire meridian, which is near your solar plexus, rubbing your ribs. And this is for the liver and stomach point, drawing back in and then down your back, rubbing your tailbone, which is the beginning of the governing meridian, which runs up your spine. Bring your hands up the sides, pressing your thumbs into the lung points in either side of your chest, and also rubbing under your collarbones for the kidneys. Coming up over the throat point and down to draw your fingers up the back of your neck and pressing your thumbs into the base of your skull, and with your attention on your crown. Pressing your pinkies into your crown and drawing your hands across to cross over your face, and then just rubbing over your eyebrows, under your eyes, under your nose, and under your mouth. This last point activating the central meridian, which runs down the front of your body, and we're drawing this energy down our throat, past the heart and lungs, really following with your intention, down through your stomach, organs, bladder point, and then down the front of your legs back into the earth. So we're going to have a close look at all the points now. So this is raising up, lifting the buttocks, coming over the hips, fingers coming around and lifting up into the perineum. This is the root, coming up past the bladder point, solar plexus, which is your fire meridian up towards the heart, around. And so your palms press the top of your ribs, and then your elbows press the bottom of your ribs. This is your liver and stomach point, respectively. Coming around now to rub the tailbone, which is the start of the governing meridian. And while we're doing this, we're also activating the large intestine point in the hand, which is just here between the thumb and index finger, and we alternate between left and right. So this is happening while we're rubbing the lower back. Bringing the hands up the sides then towards your armpits, and then pressing the thumbs in and rubbing under the collarbones. We then bring our hands up, feeling the lymph in the neck and coming down to continue up the governing meridian, pressing our thumbs into the base of the skull, creating a crown with the intention of activating our crown before bringing our pinkies down into our crown. The thumbs rise up, and it's almost like tracing a halo around your head as our left hand, right hands cross over, bringing our fingers down our forehead, massaging over our eyebrows, under our eyes, massaging the face to release any tension under the nose, which is a governing meridian point, under the mouth, which is the central meridian point, and massaging the jawline as well, before bringing all this energy down this front line that I mentioned before. Central meridian, feeling your humanness, feeling your reconnection into your body and through the body to nature itself, as we now release the energy back down into the earth. So now we are ready to perform. We are ready to tell a story. We're ready to start feeling into what it's like to hold a position in space, which is that of the author. One of the foundations of open world theatre is a simple exercise called I don't have to be entertaining, or I don't need to entertain you, or anything along those lines. The task is usually done in a group where we walk into the center of the group and we look at people and we just say, I don't need to be entertaining. And it's really feeling it. It's not just saying it, but it's feeling the relinquishing of the obligation of placating, of pleasing, of getting approval from other people. So that's something that I'd like you to do for yourself, perhaps standing in front of a mirror and looking and witnessing and conveying that intention, whatever wording you like. But the essence is, I don't need to be entertaining. I don't have to qualify to be here. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to earn a position on earth. I can be here. I don't have to have a funny punchline. I don't have to have a sexy look over my shoulder. I can just be here. And that allows me to really tune into my actual experience, and that's where the riveting storytelling comes from. When someone is really engaged in the moment of the story unfolding within them. And it's a huge honor to receive someone, to witness a storyteller who is allowing you to see them when they're having an experience. So that's what it all comes down to for me, is being present, being tapped into the energies that are moving around one, and authentically having an experience while someone is witnessing us. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's extravagant and dramatic. It doesn't really matter. It's just allowing the truth of the moment to be. And you'll know when you get it. So the task is go up to a mirror, look at yourself, and say, I don't need to be entertaining. A second aspect you can add to that is life is already fascinating. And then look at yourself. See yourself not as the persona or personality that you know you are, but instead simply as a conglomerate of organs and textures of life animating the different muscles in your face, and just become interested. Become interested in yourself. Become interested in the life that you exude when you move, when you breathe, when you are still. There's always some movement happening. So you don't need to be entertaining. Life is already fascinating enough. The next task is looking at what I call energetic scaffolding. So if you imagine on a building site, there are these poles and these braces that essentially hold up the structure of a building. I believe that our energy, however you conceive of that, is what holds the shape of us, and it also tells the story of who we are. You can see people walking down the street and they might have a certain posture, they might hold themselves in a certain way, which tells us a lot about how they are. And so before we start to assume different personas and tell different stories in our body, I like to tune into the present moment and see what scaffolding we have already erected within ourselves. I do believe that we exude a certain blueprint, if you like, into the architecture of our face to create our expressions and even just our personality that is in this meat body. And as well as the outline of this human form, sometimes you can feel quite strange shapes within us as well. For example, your hands might feel really big and heavy, or you might feel you've got like a diagonal pole jutting through your torso, or you might feel that your one foot is really heavy and the other one is hardly touching the ground. There can be these dysmorphic feelings, these kind of shape-shifting changes that don't correlate exactly to our actual limbs, but are more emotional or energetic creations. So really take time now to feel into your body. 3 components, as I say: breath, movement, and sound, or breath, sound, movement, are great ways to activate and tune into energy. Just moving and sounding and breathing, and feel into where things feel tight and where they feel open. Feel into where you have more sensation or less sensation. It can be quite subtle in the beginning, and then you can start to exaggerate. You can start to acknowledge through breathing and moving and building it into an exaggerated version of what it is, to really bring it to the surface. So get yourself into a neutral body position and really feel into any lines or shapes. In this case, I'm really feeling some kind of curved, almost like horns in my head. So I'm just moving left and right, and casting the hands in a particular direction can help align the imagination and the mind with the energetic shapes. So I'm just allowing the hands to create the horn shapes down each side. And then when you're starting to move, the character can start to come out, the personality, the emotions, sometimes even a message or a concept. It might be like, oh, I'm stuck, or I'm not looking after myself, I feel afraid. Whatever it is, there could be some kind of signal, a message, or an idea that is wanting to be conveyed in the body. So just allow yourself to exaggerate, and then you can release out and have different rises and falls, shaking out to come back to 0 point. You might find a different energetic scaffolding, or you might just want to step back and explore in a new way those energies. So in this case, I'm feeling this loop in my head, and I'm exploring that by shifting my entire head, by shifting my arms. And what I feel is that when we are exact, or when we can match the exact feeling, we can then release what's stagnant in us. Now that we've felt into what is being held or stuck in our body, we can open up into the many different types of energies that might be able to drop into our body. So these I refer to as potentials. Think of it like an energetic or even electrical potential. It's built up in our mental space or in our spiritual space, and then we want to open the floodgate so it can actually enter and become an embodied reality through us. So feeling into this now, getting used to always beginning in a state of readiness in 0 point, shaking out any attachments so you can be fully open to the moment. I like having my palms facing forward and open, so I just feel like I'm facing life, and imagining my potential above me, plugging into the atlas vertebrae in the back of my head, and allowing it to just zap like lightning down into my body and activate without too much premeditated thought, more just feeling the intention or characteristic of what that potential is, and then just allowing it to play through the body. Feeling the engagement of the core, making sure you don't hurt your back, full self-responsibility for what your body can do. And playing with different dynamics, the highs and the lows, the aggression, the beauty, the smoothness, the sharpness. And always bringing interest to the moment. Not self-consciousness, but instead interest in the dance. And feeling how this extension through the body, through the face and through the limbs, can still have integrity and relate to the energy that is at the core of this movement. And when we feel we've really explored it to its extent, then we can reset. Each time coming back to a set position, reimagining a new source up above us of potential, and then allowing it once again to zap down into us through the brain and engage the body. So now that we've first of all freed up the energy scaffolding, we're now tapping in to any new real-time desire for a new line of energy to come through us, a new story to be told through our bodies. We step into the arena to actually connect with an audience, or it could be a job interview, or it could be on a date, whatever the space is. You're stepping into a space to actually connect with other real live human beings. So the three key ingredients in that case is the space, the people, and your intention. So I do it in that sequence. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. If you have the luxury of being in the space before others arrive, I take that opportunity. I go into the space, I assume my performance space, where I'm going to be, and I allow my own energy to exude and to expand, to fill the space, and reassure myself that I have a right to be there, and that what I'm going to share in that day is of benefit. And that allows me to actually allow my full power to come out and reach other people. Then I go into their position and I go and sit perhaps in the audience seat and go, all right, cool. So my energy, it's like throwing a tennis ball out into the audience. It's going to be thrown, it's going to land here with them in their senses. And I'll go right to the back of the room and I'll touch the back of the wall and go, cool. So I'm actually going to fill this entire space. That's if I have the luxury of being in the space beforehand. If not, I'll just walk in the moment and just orient myself to the present moment, looking at the ceiling, looking at the wall, looking at the floor, breathing in, softening and opening to what is actually in front of me. Then I connect with the people, and that can be simple eye contact or even just opening to acknowledge that they are in the space. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out eye gaze. It can just be an authentic and open, hi, here we are, we're going to engage. Having those as the initial intention or attention helps me actually interact with what's in front of me, rather than coming on with a premeditated entry point or a premeditated introduction. And that way I'm open to changing if my environment or the people in front of me are in a very different energy to what I thought they would be. But once I've established that connection, I come back to my intention of what I actually want to convey, what the story is that I want to tell through my presence in this moment. It's a full opening to my intention, meaning I really get it in my gut. Cool, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm here. But then I release it. I don't want to be always referring to it like a textbook out of the periphery of my vision, just going, oh hi, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that we are going to be, and it feels rote, it feels robotic, it feels a bit stilted. Instead, I just want to trust that I know the story that I'm going to tell, and the primary element is the alive interaction, the giving and receiving from the people that are witnessing my story. And that's it. Space, people, and intention. And then conveying your intention as a brand new energy, really reconnecting with that inspiration. So even if it's a story or even if it's a message that you've thought of beforehand, don't just parrot it off, don't just retell it in a robotic way. Instead, allow the energy, allow the inspiration, allow the opening, that eureka moment to be alive in you again, and allow the witness or the audience to actually see how you are moved by your own message, how you are brought to life. Because it's not just our words that people listen to, it's also our entire demeanor, our entire expression that tells them a lot about the reality that we're holding in us, that we hope that they receive through the telling of our story. I'm going to now take you through a process I call the creation sequence. You can follow along in your course notes as well with a detailed description of each stage. In essence, this process of being an artist, of being a storyteller, is akin to being a creator of any kind, even a godlike universal author. We come back to a 0 point, a nothingness, back to the void. And from there, we start with our intention, with our story. And then we begin to issue it forth. It ripples into existence through sound, through movement, through meaning. So this meditation I'm going to take you through is in essence the entire cycle. We can do this as a daily practice, and it's a way of taking ourselves through the creation sequence so that we can reiterate that on stage. It can be a part of our overall production cycle. If you want to write a play or a speech or create a performance, you can take yourself through this over an extended period. but it can also be in every new moment, coming back to a readiness on stage, coming back to a readiness in a moment with the person you're talking to. Setting your intention and allowing that intention to guide you into the various manifestations and expressions, authentically in the moment, being shifted by it, being moved by it, allowing the intention to create the ripple, and then feeling into the emotions after the fact, and then decoding it into meaning after the fact. So it's a really instinctual process. So let's go through that now. As always, dropping into the body, being led by the breath, releasing any control and tension, and returning yourself to nothingness. Feeling that detachment at the back of the head, feeling yourself relinquishing control, and instead just becoming interested in the bliss of sensation. Feel the unbuckling of the reins, an open-palmed sensation of allowing. And when you feel that openness, that nothingness, that void, which may take a few minutes to drop into, so taking your own time, honoring your own process, but when you feel that openness, allow that flicker of intention to emanate in your core, filling into your heart, and aligning your expression with the state you would like to have result because of your storytelling. Imagining the effect you would like to create in the world, in the audience's minds, because of what you're about to issue forth. Feeling that reality and allowing that to inform the intention that you set for this creation. Once you feel that yes in the body, that exactness, that clarity, that certainty, which can take a while, or it could be in an instant. And this is where we distinguish thinking from knowing. Thinking takes mechanics of time, it takes relative importances and stories and social values and rights and wrongs. It can be quite complicated and takes effort to try and calculate and come with an answer that is correct. But knowing can be whole in an instant. It's quite effortless and unminded, in fact, but it's clear and it's certain, and it's just yes, it feels like a harmonious opening in the body and an alignment. So when you feel that, just intuitively start to make sound. Yeah. So you might want to clear out the channels, you might sort of be uncomfortable, go up and down, stretching out the channels, finding the ugly, the beautiful, going up and down in density, in note and pitch. And it's like you're scanning and honing in on a note or a sound which feels to be a true representation of that intention. It could be emanated from a particular part of the body that feels like, yeah, this is where I want to speak from. And then we just loop it. And a key part for me in allowing these things to come through is not feeling that it is necessarily a representation of me, not being precious about what it means or how it sounds, because there are so many different songs, so many different ideas, so many different possible movies or plays or paintings or dances that we could be telling, so many other lives we've witnessed. It's about softening and loosening so that you can be the best channel and representation of these exterior potentials as well, to allow them to come through. And just be interested. If a note sounds weird or a body does an unusual thing, be interested, like, cool, my tool can do that. And bear witness with reverence to the art that comes through, understanding that it, like a sunset, is just a hue of your humanness. It is just one of many qualities. And just go, cool, and allow that to play, loop it, be unminded, be detached, be open, soften, become a bigger, more true channel, in as much as we don't interfere with what wants to come through. Once you start to feel that is underway, allow the body to actually move. How can that sound then become a movement in the body? So when you've got, like, my body here is opening into, it feels like I feel like lizard. It feels like I feel like lizard. And so I'm feeling this opening of these gills or these frills around here. That's the body that is emanating from the sound. And then that drops me into a feeling. What sort of feeling comes from this body sensation? It feels like I'm being held back. You know, it could be life, it could be relationships, it could be my own inhibition, and it feels like it's just pulling and drawing me back. So now I go from movement into feeling. I'm feeling older. I'm feeling like life has gradually pinned me down into my deathbed. And I then go from a feeling into words. What words would be emanated from that feeling? I understand it can be awkward when the body's nervous system starts to break down. And I'm scared for the limitations that could bring when life starts to feel like it's getting smaller. And I just wanted to say it wasn't always this way. It's not necessarily all that I have been. And so once we've spoken, once we've taken that intention into a sound, allowed that sound to infuse our body into a movement, allowed that movement to then create some kind of structure in our body, which then is assigned a feeling or explored and dug down into to discover the feeling at the core of it, and then allowed that feeling to be given voice in some way that makes sense to our human way of assigning meaning. We then manifest that into some kind of art. In this case, it could be a monologue. You could draw a picture intuitively. You could do a dance. You could create a painting, write a poem. But it's a way of allowing that to then exist external to you. Could be like this, a character video that you can then re-watch. But it's put externally so that we can then re-inspect it and be interested in what are these things that are coming to the surface? What patterns can we recognize in it? Is it particularly sharp? If I was to reflect on that character that just came through, it's quite sad. It feels like life is running out. It feels like my life doesn't necessarily represent me, and I want to almost apologize for my current state. It's a feeling like not taking the opportunities when they were there. It's definitely a story that I experience when I witness people in old age, and I think of myself in old age, but even right now at my current crossroads in life, it's like, shit, what am I going to do with these next 20, 30 years, my key golden years of service and contribution to humanity? So it's reflecting on like what's coming to the surface. It could be abstract. You might see certain angular lines or flowing lines, certain colors you use, certain gestures you repeat in a dance. And then just coming simply into a state of curiosity. We might not always have the big psychological insight into our psyche, but it at least gives us a place to start or continue for the rest of the day. What are the questions we are asking? And to go forward in curiosity, to open to the answer to that question. What is it, for example, that I'm not fulfilling? What opportunities am I not taking? What am I going to regret if I don't fully experience while I have the faculties, the senses, the capabilities in my body to lean into and welcome into my life? And that's how then I would proceed into the rest of the day, or potentially proceed into writing a story or creating something which I can pass on to others. Because that is apparently what is most alive within me in this moment. As with most things in this universe, there is a duality. There is a give and receive energy to embodiment. So with embodiment, I often think of it being something coming from an idea space into a physical reality, something to become embodied. But there's also an element of exuding or allowing out some kind of energy as well in embodiment. And it becomes really fascinating when we look at the chakra points or your energy centers in your body as other little entities or having their own personalities. When we look at it on a physical level, there are these plexuses or these networks of nerve endings, just like in our brain, so they could almost be thought to have this sentience of their own. But also there are themes. There are general kind of energies or concepts which relate to archetypes, which relate to these stereotypes or these conglomerate personalities that we build up to represent what we understand of humanity at large, but also of ourselves, looking at the different personalities held within us, whether it be your inner child or your beast or your lover or your king, these different kind of energies within you. And so I'm going to track you through your chakra system and have us embody the different identities that are held within us, at all times coming to an authentic place, distinguishing between just performing, just acting, just being presentational, and instead being experiential, tapping into the truth of that energy or that archetype in you. What part of you is like that? What part of your own desires and urges and interests could be expressed through that particular energy? So we're going to be starting off with our root, feeling down into our perineum, the area between our genitals and our anus, feeling into our tailbone, and allowing us to feel the earth element within us. Sometimes there can be shame and guilt and taboo and dirt and primal beast-like characteristics in this space, uncouth, uncivilized, wild expression. A way that I like to connect into this part of the body is through breathing in an orbit along the governing and then central meridians of the body. So as you breathe in, this is just to activate and drop us into this body part. Imagine you drawing energy up from your perineum, from your anus, up from the tailbone, along your spine, up towards your crown. And in yoga they call it mula bandh or root lock. We actually draw this part of the body, this root, up into the torso. When you look at Kundalini yoga, they have this idea of this spiral-like energy or this serpent, this golden serpent that's coiled up inside us. And you can have the concept of that starting to open up and infuse its energy up into us. And we will definitely feel differently depending on where that energy emanates from. If it's emanating from your root, you can feel a bit primal, you can have desires, you might feel sexual, you might feel like you're claiming your territory, aggressive, all this kind of thing. If the same kind of energy, this Kundalini awakening, this chi or prana, there's so many different names for it, but essentially it's life force, energy, sensation. If that same energy was to emanate from your heart, well, I guess it's not the same energy, it's the same essence or quality, but it feels very different. It feels now loving and expansive, it feels connecting and generous. If this energy was to perhaps be activated up in this third eye space, you might come into the dreaming mystery scape, this third eye connecting into your vision, connecting into the greater dream-like mystery of the occult, all this kind of thing. So in essence, when this one thing, the energy or the prana, is activated, it will bring with it different connotations of the role we are playing. It'll activate your body and lead how you move your body, how you walk, how you talk, but also in relation to other people. Are you the predator, or are you the generous saint, or are you the guru leading people on a meditation? So it also assigns your audience some kind of role in relation to who you are now playing. So breathing now up, feeling the energy come along the spine up towards the crown. And on the exhale, cascading down the front, down our central meridian. The meridians being these energy lines, and that comes down our front. Breathing up and down, breathing up. Really focusing on drawing that root energy, allowing it to activate. And then coming down. This is called a microcosmic orbit breath. So once you've pulsed this a few times through the body, we can now move into the embodiment phase.
I feel like you're tricking me. I feel like you trying to pull the wool over my eyes. I know sometimes people think I do the wrong thing. Allow me out my little box, please. I know how you feel about me. I never wanted to be liked, just allowed. I don't like the feeling of cities, the way they put their lines into everything with the paint on the road and their sharp-edged metal signs and their big glass buildings.
Woo! All right. Definitely a key part of this whole process is how to release in between segments, how to tell one story and then being able to change into another character or another narrative, how to fully allow yourself to go there, because it can be scary to really feel things and to trust yourself enough to let go, to trust that you can repair, that you can come back to yourself, that you can not harbor the echo of the emotions, of the experiences you played out. I think that's a key thing for the mental well-being of any storyteller. So for me, a simple thing like shaking out, like massaging the face, like deep breaths and letting out sound, like collapsing, coming back into the present, looking at my environment, looking where I am. All these things help me come back to 0 point. Another key thing is who we consider that we are. The be in the be do have. What is the beingness? What is the personality of you? And I think that regardless of how authentic we are always an assumed character. This Atlas character that I've created is someone that likes to be sweaty, that likes to feel like I've been dragged through an experience and come out with rashes and scars, and it's like, shit, yeah, I'm proud of that state as a storyteller, to be like, whoa, he went through the ringer. So if that's my assumed identity and my value system, when I have a really intense experience, I feel good. I don't feel beaten up afterwards. Whereas if I considered myself to be someone who's fragile or overly sensitive, who's been taken advantage of, who's had people impose things on them their whole lives, and this could be based absolutely on real world experience, but the key thing is how I conceive of myself. If I feel that I'm that kind of person, after I have an artistic, creative, emotive experience, it might really shake me. I might need to take time out. I might want to display to the world like, shit, that really affected me. I need a moment. And while that is totally fine, I want to be brave enough to name our own dramatization, our own acting out of the character of self. So as a storyteller, I would encourage you to some degree, identify with someone that enjoys being expanded, that enjoys exploring the dark and the light, that relishes being smacked around and being affected by life, that is jubilant when they stand up and they go, oh shit, that was real. And therefore I think we will recover quicker because it is in alignment with our values, and it verifies. I think we are self-validating creatures, so if you want to be someone like that, then you'll have an experience and you'll prove it right. It's like, yeah, shit, I got knocked, but I got back up. I am a good fighter. You know, it's that pride of taking a shot and getting back up. And being the creation as well as the creator. You know, if I tell a story, I am the author, but I am also the one feeling the story coming through me as a character. So I'm also on the effect side of the cause and effect dynamic. And just relish it. So, moving up from our root, we come up into the sacral chakra. This is the womb space, regardless of if you're in a male or female body. This energetic, in Qigong they're called the lower dantian. It's this space which is a core seed of creation. If you feel it just about an inch down from your belly button and then in towards your spine, it is a place from which we can evoke sensuality, sexuality, connection, belonging with tribe. As far as the elements go, it's your water element, so it can be quite emotional. And to tap into the space, I would encourage the bellows breath. So if you imagine you've got these fire bellows which stoke the fire, we're going to draw in our lower abdomen and we're going to support the exhale as we draw it in. So really feeling that we are drawing in the lower abdomen and supporting the exhale, and the exhale is coming out of our nostrils, and we're going to pulse that breath, and that is going to stimulate and activate energy from this area within us. Breathing in. Once again, applying Mulaban, so we're drawing that root up into the space, but focusing on the sacral energy. And you can feel an expansion. As we're holding the breath, we make sure we're not having too much tension in our face or shoulders or our neck, and we're opening even though we're holding the breath. And that's a process you can extend for a minute or several minutes, or you can repeat that, and really getting this activation of the abdomen happening. Really getting the activation of the abdomen happening. Once we're in this space, it's time for embodiment.
Ah ouais? Bonjour, I'm feeling very watery. So slippery. I'm feeling very slippery. So much water. Wow, 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 wow. I'm a lake. 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 Hello, I'm a lake. I'm a lake, I'm a water body. That is why you and I can relate though, because you are at least 80% water. 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 What are you going to do with your water? When was the last time you had some water juice? I want proof. I want proof.
Well, that was quite fluid, wasn't it? Okay, next we're going to come up to the solar plexus. So this area is associated with the warrior archetype. It's your fire element. It's got a lot of direct, I guess, masculine force, clarity. It's got also the idea of healthy anger, setting boundaries. And the way I personally like to activate this is with a kneeling cat-cow. So in yoga, the cat-cow position really allows us to concave and convex the back to activate the spine, which I personally in my body need to extend the flexibility of, so I really enjoy this activation. And the way I do it is simply kneeling, placing my hands on my knees and allowing myself to push the solar plexus out and concave it in, pushing out.
Today, I'm feeling you are not articulating the precision of your decision. When we are sitting on one side or other, we know where we sit. You are balancing like ballerina on top of a tightrope that does not exist. Decide your position.
Okay, now we're going to come up into the heart space. So there's a whole body of work around the idea of rebirthing breath work, which is a heart-based breath. I encourage you to look into it. I also run sessions in it, and it's a very, very transformative process, but that in itself can take an hour and a half or 2 hours to really drop into that state of the rewilded breath, relieving the tensions that we hold in this space, which understandably is protected, is held. I mean, it's our heart, it's our lungs, it's our vital organs. It's a very sensitive and vulnerable place. But to summarize down the process, we're just breathing into our heart. So rather than in our abdomen, the abdomen can still fill, but we make sure it comes up into our heart. We relax our shoulders, we open up. This can be done lying down if you like. And I would encourage you to breathe through the mouth in this case. With this one, we're mainly focusing on the inhale. So with the sacral breath, the bellows breath, fire breath, we're focusing on the exhale, pushing air out. With this one, we're focusing on the inhale, breathing in through the mouth. And allowing the exhale to simply being a surrender. Every single exhale is a chance to let go deeper and deeper into trust, further and further into the body, and simply just let go. Really feeling the beauty of the connection between the exhale and the inhale, feeling the way we can smooth out the tension. So we're not sort of inhaling, holding and stopping, and exhaling, holding and stopping, but instead we're having it as a connected breath. Before we get too full, we release, and before we completely exhale, we allow them to refill. So it becomes a nice, effortless loop in that middle ground. This process can go on for quite a while, but just do it until you feel some kind of liberation, some kind of softening. As we activate this, some emotions can be churned up. Some tensions can also rise in the body. They call it tetany, when the forearms and fingers or mouth and face can actually be pulled quite tight. We just keep breathing, we keep loosening, keep softening, and feeling that homecoming into our heart space. Once you feel you've activated that through the breath, we can then become embodied. I have a desire. I want to soften into the clouds of my mind, of the cerebrum, of the dream, him, her, it resides in. I'm no longer defining all of the creatures that speak in this jungle among us. No, there's a voice inside here. So there's a place where I once made a game from, and it was really cool. We used to run and play dragons, but everyone wanted to be a dragon and I wanted to be the knight, because when you're the knight you had to hold a sword, and the sword was actually a stick and it was a twig, and it kept on just breaking, and so it just felt like really stupid. But then everyone wanted to be the dragon, because the dragon itself it was so cool. It used to shoot fire, and it had all this tail, and the tail was so cool because it had this sharp sort of spiky thing, and you could just slice people, so it was like having a knife that was a part of your body. And then everybody kept being the dragon that I wanted to be, because I really liked being the water dragon, because the water dragon could shoot ice as well. But then everybody's like, I want to be the water dragon because it's blue, and that was the coolest color at the time. Alright, how are you guys doing so far? Hope you're coping, hope you're doing well. It can be quite a marathon to allow the body to be gripped by different energies and to keep coming back with the intention of generating intensity. And intensity doesn't have to be loud, doesn't have to be yang, doesn't have to be violent. It can also just be truly softening into your heart, or it can be being cute, or it can be just being silent but focused. All these things still have an intensity because of the presence that they require. So hope you're feeling that workout within you. Now I want to come into the jaw and the throat and the shoulders, this expression space. It's a really important space for us to connect to, because it is literally the bottleneck. It is the place that all of these really passionate, deep, primal emotions get to be shared with the world. It's a place that we actually articulate the feelings. And so it can be a lot of strain on the throat. Often when people try to sing or articulate, it can constrict. Also, there's a real potency, particularly around the rape culture we have, the sexual oppression, the violence, when women in particular can connect the yoni to the throat and start to allow that relationship to have their voice heard. There's a beautiful liberation that can come from this little space here, opening up and honoring the rest of the body as it wants to be expressed. So I really encourage you to spend time at this level of throat. And when we get too much into our head, it's like we're bypassing the throat. Rather than coming from the body, we're coming out to our head and then trying to make it make sense. So for this one, I'm just going to encourage us to speak gibberish, to speak nonsense language, and instead to allow so I'm just playing with the body. I'm feeling that root kind of space. And I remember back in my last year of high school, I did a piece which they call Gramolo. So studying Commedia dell'arte, which is Italian mask work, and Dario Fo, and people like this, there's this pantomime aspect where we just come into the sounds that represent the character. We come into the sounds that represent an emotion and a feeling that can create shapes without worrying about the exact language. And the beauty of that is it can transcend cultural and language boundaries, but can also plug into the dynamic nature of the voice. Rather than relying on the painting of pictures with words, we paint it with the sounds themselves. For those of you who work in the healing space, wellness, new age kind of space, this can also easily be identified as light language. This concept of speaking from essence to essence. So that feeling in me being moved and reverberating the song of myself out, and you receiving it without having to interpret the words and the sentences in my particular phrasing. You get the essence and you feel it. It's like a remembering on a somatic level, on a body level, what that feeling is in my body. It's one of the most direct ways of imparting or translating a feeling from one body to another. So feeling up now through my body into the sacral yandia dundai rukukumaya nea yes kokona yama hey gashanta kinkariyana maya titi kana eya punaya no noritoyo maya koshonime yantara ya Ushamaya Marikita Senarago Rangane mo chupuro Totoyo no magana siete kush pepine Carange
Che ne me son pora ma papapito poi ne sicuro ne himbo fishing paio un po' scioppo
Yow! What a whirlwind our body can be. So now we're coming into the third eye space. This is traditionally associated with wisdom, with mystery, with vision. The breathing exercise I like to do to activate this place is alternate nostril breathing. So I usually place my index finger on the third eye spot. So closing my right with my thumb, breathing in through my left nostril. Closing that nostril, breathing out through my right. Now breathing in through my right and out through my left. In through my left, out through my right, and I'll just continue that process. While doing that, I'm really feeling the air as though it's going directly into the brain. One key realization I had, which just works for me, is imagining the third eye as being at the back of the head. So rather than imagine it being here at the front, the frontal lobe, imagine it positioned where the brain or the skull intersects with the spinal column. And just imagine a pineal gland, like a little sac, positioned here at the back of the head. And imagine it emanating purple light in ripples through your brain. To me, it feels really cathartic and healing. So you can be doing that while doing the alternate nostril breath. Or you might want to do it afterwards and just allow that release of energy to activate this space. And for me, if I'm meant to be embodied from this space, it's quite subtle. It starts to come into serenity. Sometimes I sit on a bus and I want to speak to a complete stranger, and I realize that that is perhaps inappropriate. Why do we find it so abhorrent? Our longings, our bodies, our sense of relief when the world doesn't have to be made of sharp corners. And if someone does unfold like a petal in your palm, savor it, relish the realness of someone unbuckling their defenses and taking off the armor. I feel it. I sense the expanded dismantling as we drift apart. And slowly the echoes between us, those signals which represent our innate interconnectedness, grow weaker and smaller until they're barely a whisper on the winds. And we close our windows, scared of the winter cold, and we end up safe and dead. And we end up safe and dead. And finally we come to our crown. And for me, there is no better place to represent the unknown of freestyle. When I teach people freestyle, I often break it down into 3 essential components. It's great to practice the different components separately so we don't overwhelm ourselves trying to juggle all of the ingredients of a seamless freestyle performance. So to begin with, I would get people to look at the content, meaning what they're talking about. So we could pick any topic, like a flower, and just say that I think they are displays of beauty, they are unapologetic sexuality and reproduction, they are a means of apology. I think flowers are the antidote to war. We place them in rifles. Flowers are momentary before they start to shrivel and wither and turn brown at the edges. They are delicate, and yet they've been immortalized in so many paintings and songs and movies. So that's just concepts, it's content. I'm not worrying about rhyming, I'm not worried about the rhythm and the musicality, just what I'm talking about. The next part that I'd look at would be the musicality, being the contours, the rhythms, the highs and the lows and the spaces in between. The ways that we can talk and have a dynamic shift and make sure that you are sitting still to listen to what I am talking about, allowing the mouth to be like a punch. And sometimes we can stumble around like we are Hunchback of Notre Dame, ringing a bell, trying to tell our story and make it a little bit more relevant than the rest of them, because I like the way that we hang down and then we come up to the height of meaning before slowing down, just like a petal to settle in a palm. So just really allowing the differences to help certain aspects stand out. Our audience will become attuned to a particular rhythm and song, and if it's too monotonous, regardless of the riveting nature of the content, we'll become numb and tune out. So it's allowing the shifts, the changes, the louds, the softs, the fasts, the slows, all these things to draw the energy, and it's like conjuring the interest, conducting them, massaging them forward, keeping them riveted, keep on shifting and changing it, like you are stitching a tapestry. What are we going to be able to make with all of these fingers, all of this English, all of these lungs sprung like balloons? And I feel like we are going to be able to take you to another dimension if you can beep, boop, 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 press in the codes that will open up the portal to another dimension. The last part that I work with is form, in this case word play. So looking at the way that sounds themselves can lead us forward with fadwad, what if, fidaf, what, wit, wift, waft, a waft, waft, draft, drift, driftwood, would you, driftrat, bats, bat robots, bats are robots. Yeah, so you're just playing with the shapes, you're playing with the sounds. It doesn't have to make sense, like content in the beginning. It doesn't have to have dynamic shifts necessarily, it often will, but that's not the focus. Instead, it's looking at the form, how we can cut up and repaste together words. Gets a word, words a get, gets a word, words a get. Obviously, I like to put things forward and backwards. Backwards, black squids, black squidink, squidonk, dink donk, tinky tonk, driving drunk, drinking dragon blood. You can also look at the shapes of words, feel it in your mouth, monotony, monstrous mouthfuls of miscellaneous misfit mumblings, mutations, taking it, feeling the fake of the stripping off the masks and asking the darkness to dance. Yeah, just really being led by the shapes. And then in retrospect, we can give it context and meaning. And that's what I end up doing, is shuffling between these three things. What I'm talking about, there's the content, the musicality, the rhythms of the song of it, and then the wordplay, the form, the shapes that I can sort of shift, slice and shuffle and repaste together. So let's do it. Opening up into this surrendered space, being fascinated by the process, never trying to preempt so that we land on the right word or so that we're funny or entertaining. Instead, honoring, honing, honor to hone. I am a donor. Donating these words and service, skimming across the surface like a skimming pebble to settle down, descending unendingly, befriending the fearful monsters below the surface underneath, with thunder for teeth and lightning for eyes, as I'm witnessing these ideas like flies around the carcass, around the corpses. Because if you all talk, it's nothing but a head, but I want to feel my full body instead, led by my blood. Blip on a screen, blip on a screen, blip. These patterns, feeling like a constellation within me, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars and Pluto. And then in between, it's the nothingness, stuffing it like a teddy bear, because that is where we feel safe enough to snuggle up into our dream space, just like a toddler, just like the gods we are. Really feeling the shapes, feeling the beauty. It's like massaging the clay. It's like calligraphy at the back of me. It's an epiphany. It's the epitaph, the eulogy. It's my autograph. I'm sorting the shards of this broken vase that was so precious into the pieces of the puzzle so I can piece it back together until it's a perfect vista of existence. One quick pointer I just wanted to drop in is that I highly recommend having experiences out in life, sometimes in the context of being a performer or being a therapist or being a public speaker or whatever context you're being a storyteller in. It feels like a very safe or controlled environment. But I believe it's when the wilderness of life leaks through into these containers that we really feel riveted. We feel like the topics we're discussing, the stories we're telling, relate to a bigger, more universal experience as a human being. And that is evident in people who have had real life experiences, people who have traveled is a big one, people who have done the inner work, people who have simply connected with the elements, gone out and maybe done a self-burial process, maybe done some breath work floating in water, maybe done a fire ritual, maybe sung in a choir, maybe lost a loved one, maybe worked in community service and seen the hardships of people, or even just gone out and observed humans sitting in the streets, watching people when they think no one is watching, and doing it lovingly, doing it without judgment, but with keen interest and empathy, peering into the soul, not of a particular person, but into humanity itself, into the overall way that we as human beings engage, the ways we hold ourselves, the ways we navigate the public space, the ways we respond to things. What's it like when the grit and grain of the world is embedded in your skin and it changes the chemical makeup of what is within you? Storytellers like Billy Connolly, like Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. These are, I guess, more Hollywood-based iconic figures, but the reason I love these people, Johnny Depp, Will Ferrell, is you can really feel the pathos. You can feel, as Billy Connolly says, being windswept and interesting. You know, the fact that being on a motorbike ride around Ireland, or the unique way that they're reflecting on their own experience and existence, and their conviction, the way that they know, sure, this might just be a character, but I am speaking a truth, if not my specific truth in this particular moment as my persona. I'm speaking a truth that keenly represents and exactly is authentically a true human essence that I've witnessed in the world, that I've experienced, that I have absorbed even through someone else. Because often we as storytellers are in a position to give voice to stories and circumstances and messages and raise awareness about areas that don't have spokespeople, or to draw in the narratives of lives who don't have a mouthpiece to express themselves. And I think that authenticity and that bruised, scarred, spitty, sweaty experience is evident in us as a storyteller. So yeah, I would encourage all storytellers to get out there and start with the elements. Start by crawling around, by acting like a toddler, by lying on the ground, by smelling things, prodding at things, tasting things, and stripping away the insulation between us and life. Not being so clinical and premeditated and safe, but actually allowing the jungle to infuse its vines and get up in our nostrils and change us. To understand that it's a symbiotic system. We are in existence with other things, and we will be enhanced when we allow life in to muddle with us, to mess with us, to churn us. And that changes the chemical composition, it changes the energetic composition, the conceptual composition. And when we just open up, it's like being an aquarium. When we can become transparent and trusting, and we just allow all that to play within us and allow the audience to witness us, they peer into us and are fascinated by the exotic fish which glimmer in the darkness. So fill yourself with life and then become transparent, unguarded in your tellings, so that life itself can be witnessed through you. So far, a lot of the embodiment aspects I've been discussing is the body and the senses and the energies in the body of the storyteller. So we as performers, how do we infuse our stories with authenticity, with electricity? How are we led by our body? All these sort of things. But another key element in the story is the body of the audience. How are they receiving it, not just cognitively, but actually physically, viscerally. And we can enhance that through the setting, through the sounds we're using, through the lighting, even sometimes through smell, taste and touch. And so when we are the director of an experience or curator of an experience, let's think of the audience touch points. Let's think of the first time they ever hear of this engagement. It could be an invitation we send them, or a phone call. It could be a poster on a wall. And let's guide them on a journey, step by step. It's also the context of the city that you're in, the building, things we can't necessarily control, but at the same time we can understand and incorporate and leverage the power of. So if you're near an area where there's a lot of roadworks and things happening, maybe that can somehow influence the story. You could even shelve that idea and bring it back later. You might refer to something that they noticed but they didn't really think was part of the story, and then you bring it back later in the narrative. You can also do things like tell a story across different mediums, so they call it transmedia storytelling. So they might receive a little bit of information through an email, they might receive through a voice call, they might receive a little bit of an overheard conversation in the foyer before they enter the performance space. They might pick something up like a flyer on their seat and are told a little bit of the story, and then they actually have the experience obviously of the performance itself, and then maybe afterwards there's some keepsake. There's something that they get mailed. Like, there's so many different ways to slice the story up and have them receive it through a lot of different channels, which is, as I said, transmedia storytelling. Storytelling itself is a cultural experience. Often we think of it to do with, I guess, either theatre or going to the movies. But each different medium has its own connotation. Something like the opera, for example, is more high class and more high cultured. If you go to lowbrow, more street, commonplace kind of spaces and arts mediums, it feels more accessible, we feel a bit more relaxed. If you go to an art gallery or to the ballet, there's a certain cultural setting which infuses it with more maybe importance. People might be a bit more tentative, not quite sure if they're doing the right thing or the right thing. Am I picking up the right knife or fork in sequence when I'm eating this really elegant meal? All of these sort of things play into the experience of the story that people are receiving. So I like the idea of mixing and matching and maybe juxtaposing something. So you could have something that's set in a really beautiful area, but it is bringing a lot of commonplace, rough, raw, lowbrow aspects to a really high-class setting. So for example, you could just have a smashed car door hanging in an art gallery. Or the opposite could be a really highly trained opera singer who then is singing in a junkyard. These sort of things can be mixing and matching senses and expectations of the audience to really leverage the power and make one thing stand out in contrast to another. Another aspect of storytelling which I really encourage performers in open world theatre to do is to feel that they can author the setting, alter the furniture, change the lighting. You might want to even take an audience from one space to another to enable the default lighting and the ambient sound to amplify the signal of your story, to give it new context, to keep people interested, to have dynamic shifts. But I guess the main point is allow yourself to change things, to reshuffle things, to actually get in there and not feel like we're skimming on the surface. Because I think then there's a politeness and then there's a fear, there's a hands-off aspect. Whereas with storytelling, if we want it to be embodied, you want really to allow that to sink into the experience through the space and to acknowledge what's there, to give yourself the authority to author a new experience, to remix aspects, and that feels like it's a lot more alive, a lot more engaged in the world that you're in, and dangerous in some ways, daring. But these are things that really allow the story to be infused with the actuality of the senses of the audience, as well as just our bodies as storytellers. It's quite a shamanic role, that of the storyteller. We embody, especially when we go there with full conviction, without judgment, and allow the mad genius of the moment to lead us into the unnameable, the unspeakable, to represent that liminal space between madness and genius, between dreams and reality, between the taboo and the deeply therapeutic truths. When we allow that, we are representing something truly inspiring, sometimes scary, but very needed in the eyes of the audience. And it's not just about us knowing exactly what they need, it's also trusting the human mind to be an amazing pattern recognition system. And understanding that our audience or the people listening to us will pluck out the significant gestures or expressions, the words, the narratives, the metaphors embedded in our stories. To give voice to the subconscious, to tap into the superconscious, the free flow state, like these are deeply transformative processes. And so it is, as well as an artistic space, quite a ritualistic space. And I want to give you permission to feel the sincere magic in that. Not that we have to be, channeling dead relatives or anything like that, but we can speak to very personal aspects in the lives of our audience, because they will hear what they need to hear. And it's in holding the intensity of our presence, it's in peering into that inner child, into that sincere, shuddering, tremoring witness that goes, are they talking to me? Oh, this really matters. Oh, they're calling me out into the light. And saying, I don't know what your story is, But I know that we hear in stories that beautiful magical song that has been passed down through generations around campfires. We are calling people into that space which is in our genes and our ancestry, this magical place of passing on lessons, of witnessing each other's humanness, of letting out grief, of calling in the spirits, and of facing death eye to eye and saying, what the hell are you really doing with your life? Don't be caught up in the mesmerizing busyness of the story that we keep parroting back and forth in the noise of our chitter-chatter, of our usual conversations, our text messages, our news, our media. That stuff is such a distraction. And so the irony is, by telling stories, sometimes we're actually pulling people out of the noise of their stories and slapping them in the face with a moment of true exposure. So I wanted to hand that over as a key element of what I see storytelling can be. An earnest attempt to reach in and say, for a flickering, fleeting second, I want to connect. And I'm going to do what I can to tear away my bullshit so that my nervous system connects through my expressions, and you witness a quivering spirit responding to existence and gasping at the moment and not trying to make sense of it. Allowing it to be abstract, allowing it to be obscene, allowing it to be unapologetically spiritual, and looking and saying, does this feel like something that's in you? It's standing on the dance floor and welcoming other people out to dance. And for me, this is always what it's about. It's always about assembling people in space, nominating an intention, and undergoing the personal process so that the audience themselves can be gently stripped of the distraction and dropped into a moment of true stark humanness that the symbols just help activate. All the patterns and the characters and the analogies, that stuff is just a guiding light into whatever initiation or rites of passage or moment of reflection, of fork in the road of their own personal story of their life the audience is undergoing. And don't be scared of what the audience might project onto you. It's up to them to give you the power. And if you are playing a saint or a villain, okay, that's what you need to be for them. And just trusting that when there is that flicker of connected, nerve-infused, emotional alchemy, mind-blasting play, some truth, some humanness will be sparked in them, and they will take themselves on a journey. And then you just have to remain in the moment and play with them. Because actually, rather than what's happening in us, what's most important to me, at least as a storyteller, is the journey that that audience member is going on within them, in their own universe. For me, it's like handing them ingredients. It's showing a blueprint, and then they take it in through their senses, and they will construct this monolith in their mind. They will take themselves on their inner journey, because we can only reach the surface with our stories. After that, it's up to them to decode it and make it relevant to their lives, and that's beyond our realm of perception. But just know that is the depth of the work as a storyteller. I truly hope this has been a precious process for you. I hold it as something truly sacred. The telling of stories, and I guess most importantly, the opening of the storylines within us. You can think of it like a bloodline. You can think of it like an energetic echo which is emanating throughout all of humanity, and it's the sensitive souls who take up the artist's brush or put on the ballerina's shoes, who dare to feel and then to translate those feelings into something that other people can comprehend, or put it in bite-sized pieces so it can be absorbed. Because we as artists stretch ourselves, we tear ourselves open. It is harrowing, and yet it is such a noble pursuit to try to witness and celebrate the universe, to try and take it all in, because it is overwhelming. The number of shapes and colors and sounds, the different stories we are witnessing through our media, through our history books, through our daily interactions, the schizophrenia of the many layers of characters within us. Like shit, it is so much to take in. I think we would be stunned and startled if we were to truly receive all of the signals that are playing around us and throughout us. So huge respect to the storytellers, to those who dare to retell what they have experienced. And I do believe it is a beautiful reverence that we hold as we attempt to observe and then turn around and share our field notes of research to our fellow humans and going, you know what, this is what I heard, this is what I saw. We are translators of existence, bringing it back so it's relatable on the human scale. We can turn ideas into people and characters. We can wrap the disparate, scattered meaning that we draw together into a single storyline and wrap it in a particular context that makes sense to our audience. And not just in retrospect, but I do believe we are leading forward. We are encouraging and guiding a conversation culturally about how we proceed to author the story. These theatres, these places of telling are historic arenas. They are lecture halls, they are churches, they are hospitals, places of healing. And it is in that ancient ritual of the spoken word that we can reassemble and remember this common humanity. We can fall in love again. We can remember parts of ourselves. We can reflect. We can have nostalgia. We can have inspiration. And we can dare to dream things which are improbable but not impossible. And we can dare to do so because art and stories can be fanciful. They don't need to be based on fact, and yet they can paint the possibility of what can land as a very real actuality. If we dare to feel what we know, if we don't turn away, but we allow our art to infuse and heal us and shatter us and piece us back together and stand there sweating and bleeding and breathing, aghast at the moment we share with our audience. And our audience do the same with us. So thank you for joining me in this process. I hope it made sense to your senses, if not conceptually at all times. I tried to summarize many of my passions into a succinct pill to swallow in 2 hours. And I hope it's useful. And I would love to hear or in some way witness the stories that you end up telling. Tell them bravely, truthfully, and I hope I've given you a few tools which will enable you to drop into the real-time experience of each new telling. Let's keep it relevant, keep it fresh, keep it daring, and let's keep living on the bleeding edge as we as storytellers engage with futurists and trendsetters and visionaries and inventors and educators as we lean forward into the unknown and dare to be so presumptuous as to give it form in the shape of our words and our performance of the telling of our experience. I love you, rebel hearts, you brave, ingenious outlaws on the fringes. I feel you, and I hope you receive this ripple as an encouragement to keep sending your ship far afield and explore the new shores. Get lost at sea.